The Oracle Network.
Hi, I'm Taylor.
Hi, I'm Jenny.
Are you into ghosts, aliens, or murder? It's okay if you do, because we love terrible things too.
It's why we started our podcast, A Little Bit Grim.
We talk about the paranormal,
True crime,
folklore,
cults,
conspiracies,
some disasters,
and every other heinous thing that could possibly happen to a person.
It's a little bit spooky.
It's a little bit funny.
And it's a little bit grim.
And you can find us wherever you like to stream your podcasts.
And find us on your favorite social media platforms.
We'll see you there. Goodbye!
Hey, Rainbow Warriors. This is my disclaimer. Beyond the Rainbow is a true crime podcast. It's not suitable for young children, and maybe not even for some adults. I tend to swear like a sailor, and I'm kind of proud of that. Listener discretion is advised. Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. Welcome to Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBTQ+. I'm your host, CJ. Find me on the socials, Facebook and Instagram at Beyond the Rainbow Pod, and everywhere else at Rainbow Crimes. If you'd like to help support this show, please visit my Buy Me a Coffee account. There's a link to it on my website. Also, my merch store on TeePublic is a great way to support. The TeePublic merch store is under Rainbow Crimes. There you can find some cute shirts, mugs, masks, and even notebooks. So be sure to go check it out. Other ways to support a show you like is to leave them a 5-star review. This helps the podcast visibility, and the more this show is seen and heard, the better it is for our LGBTQ community. It's getting the word out there about crimes that shouldn't have happened, and it's a voice for our victims. The final way you can help support the show is to tell someone about it. That also gets the visibility of the show out there. Thank you. I appreciate you guys very much. If you'd like to be a Rainbow Warrior reporter and report a missing but not forgotten segment, it's super easy. You just have to tell me that you'd like to do it, and then I'll send you a script of our missing. You can record it with your phone or computer and then email it back to me. It's that simple. Please periodically check out my website at beyondtherainbowpodcast.com. There you can find a list of all my covered cases and links to our missing but not forgotten LGBTQ+ members. And with that, please give a glittery welcome to my friend, who's an ally, and a Rainbow Warrior reporter, Argy, also known as Tom.
Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. This episode's missing but not forgotten is Colton Pratt. Colton is a two-spirit. Two-spirit is a term used within some indigenous communities encompassing cultural, spiritual, sexual, and gender identity. The term reflects complex indigenous understandings of gender roles, spirituality, and the long history of sexual and gender diversity in the indigenous cultures. Two-spirits are revered in the indigenous communities. Colton was partying with friends on November 6, 2014, in downtown Winnipeg at the Marlborough Hotel around 9:30 p.m. Winnipeg is in the Manitoba province of Canada. At some point in the early morning hours of November 7th, he made his way from the hotel to a bus shelter at the corner of Main Street and Redwood Avenue. Winnipeg police have said that they have a video that shows Colton in and around the bus stop on the morning of November 7th, sometime between 12:20 a.m. and 1:45 a.m., and the footage is the last known time anyone has seen him. During this time period, it's believed that he had an encounter with at least 2 individuals at this location. Winnipeg police are requesting that anyone who recalls seeing activity at this location or has further information regarding these events contact the Winnipeg police. I will give a number at the end for that. Colton was born in the Calgary, Alberta, Canada area. His parents are Lydia Pratt and Colton's late father, Pernell Pratt. Lydia is from the Long Plain First Nation, and Pernell was from Sioux Valley Dakota Nation, Manitoba. Colton grew up in Winnipeg. He has 2 respected grandmas, Cuckoo Grace Daniels and Kunzi Doris Pratt, both who love and pray for him all the time. He has 3 sisters, Jade, Jada, and Jocelyn, and 1 brother, Kylen. Colton's sister, Jocelyn, has Down syndrome, and he's very fond, kind, and considerate to children with special needs. Colton's given name is Skyman, and his family's from the Bear Clan. Colton is Ojibwe and Dakota. He comes from a praying, spiritual Anishinaabe tradition and a Christian family. Colton is a funny guy. He loves a good joke, teasing. He's always wanting to have fun. His laugh is contagious. Colton loves music and likes to sing karaoke. He won a few singing contests and has a great voice like his dad. Colton enjoys meeting new people. He's cheerful, friendly, intelligent, and savvy. Colton is wanting to go into film study and had tried several times to find employment in this area. Colton is gay and let his family know a few years ago. He's accepted and loved unconditionally by his family. The most significant thing his family wants to share is that Colton is loved beyond measure. He's missed, adored, cherished, valued, and precious to them all. They want Colton home. They pray for his safety, for his well-being. They're optimistic, but they're being realistic. Colton was 26 at the time he disappeared and would be 33 if found alive today. In fact, he just had a birthday in August. Colton has brown hair and brown eyes, stands 5'10", and weighs 160 pounds. Should you have any information on Colton's whereabouts or what happened at that bus stop the early morning of November 7th, please call Winnipeg Police at the area code 204-986-6250. Back to you, CJ.
Thank you, Tom. Besties Brad and David met in the year 2011. They met at a coal mining class. I didn't know there was such a thing. Both men were coal miners, so I guess it would make sense that's why they were there taking a coal mining class. I just realized this is the 3rd episode this season that I've mentioned coal mining. First, it was boxing legend Christy Martin, whose moniker was the coal miner's daughter, and then the murder of J.R. Warren in a coal mining town. Now here we are talking about 2 actual coal miners in our story. 43-year-old Brad McGarry was openly gay, and he was one of those guys that had an incredible sense of humor. Brad liked to tease, and he'd do so with such a straight face, you had no idea if he was teasing or not unless you really knew him. Brad was great with kids, too. Although he didn't have any of his own, he became Uncle Brad to many of his friends' kids. He was a shorter man, but he was considered a big hairy bear. Brad lived in Bel Air, Ohio. His home had a big, beautiful yard with flora that Brad loved to tend to. Inside his home, it was decorated with a country motif. Brad had a tremendous amount of decorative roosters, and I'm pretty sure he would try to work into a conversation. This was his cock collection. His bestie, David Kinney, was 31 years old. He was also in that coal mining class. David was a married man, and he pretty much became the head of an instant family when he married his wife, Sherry. Sherry had 3 children she brought into the relationship with David. David, Sherry, and the kids, they all lived in Brilliant, Ohio, about a half an hour away from Gary's place. Brad and David became friends when they met in class, and pretty soon they started to hang out together outside of class. Their personalities just clicked. Brad, who was a single man, would come over to the Kinney family house for holidays. And of course the kids called him Uncle Brad. Brad even took vacations with the Kinney family. After a couple of years of friendship, Brad and David would call themselves best friends. They had fun together. They shared lives. They shared laughter. They shared stories. And they shared secrets. In 2016, Brad started to see a young guy named Scotty Butler. I don't think Brad was really in love with Scotty. I believe it was more of a lusty type relationship. Scotty was a bad boy, and occasionally he was in trouble with the law. He was also quite a bit younger than Brad. The couple bickered a lot, and the relationship didn't last too long, maybe a few months before they broke up. May 6, 2017, Brad got all gussied up in a tuxedo. He was in a family member's wedding in another county. At the wedding reception, he drank a lot. Brad was loud, but he was fun. He got to see a lot of family members, even family who lived far away, like his female cousin from Florida. That night, Brad spent the night at his mom's house. That following day, Brad loaded up his tuxedo and a couple others that the groomsmen wore. He was planning to drop the rented tuxes off back at the rental store for all of them. After he loaded the tuxes, he went back into his mom's house for a family lunch. While they were eating, Brad was messaged by someone called DJ. Brad got kind of giddy, and he told his family members he was going to hurry and drop off the tuxes, and then he was going to go home so he and DJ could have a nap. Wink, wink. In case you're not sure, a nap, that was code for sex. Brad got home around 2:55 p.m. There was a vehicle parked in his driveway, and that's not a sex code for anything. There really was a vehicle. That vehicle is seen on camera footage leaving at 3:11 p.m. You're probably thinking, wow, that was a really quick nap. Wink, wink. A little after 6 p.m., David, his wife, and one of their daughters, a 13-year-old, showed up at Gary's house to drop off a weed whacker. That's also not code for anything. It really was a weed whacker. The daughter went up to the door first and noticed it was open. When David, his wife, and the daughter peered in, they saw that the kitchen was in disarray. Drawers were pulled out and things were strewn about. David called Brad's name, but no one answered. The wife tried to call Brad's phone and no one was picking up. The wife told David to get his pistol from their car. David did. He walked around the main floor of Brad's house, not finding Brad. He then descended down the stairs to the basement. He began yelling for his wife to call 911. The wife and the daughter also came down the stairs. The wife was on her phone screaming to 911 that her husband's friend was dead. Brad was lying in a pool of his own blood, face down. David, his wife, and their daughter went upstairs and back outside to wait for the emergency services to arrive. When the police got there, they briefly spoke to the Kinney family, and then they went inside Brad's house. They went down to the basement, and they saw Brad's body laying near his covered jacuzzi hot tub. The basement was very cluttered, and instantly the police thought, suicide. But there was no gun to be found. To further change their minds about the suicide scenario, Brad had been shot twice in the back of his head. Police now started to think this might have been a botched robbery. After a little more examination, the scene looked awfully staged for a robbery. Investigators headed outside to speak to the Kinney family, the ones that found Brad. David was in tears and he told the police Brad was his very best friend in the whole world. When they asked David if he had any idea who could have done this to Brad, David told them about Scotty Butler, Brad's former bad boy lover. David also told them about two guys that had recently put up a fence around Brad's yard for him. Police thanked the family and told them they'd be in contact for a follow-up interview at a later time. In the days following Brad's murder, police would bring in Brad's friends and a female cousin, that cousin I mentioned earlier from Florida who was at the wedding. One of Brad's local female friends told the investigators Brad had a few very nice pieces of jewelry, including a couple of nice rings and several nice necklaces. She also brought up the bad boy, Scotty Butler. The Florida cousin told investigators about Brad getting a text that made him giddy, and she dropped that the name of the guy he was going to meet at his house was DJ. DJ? This was the first police had ever heard of this guy's name. A little more digging into DJ uncovered a big secret. DJ was another name for David, Brad's bestie. Police brought David in for a formal inquisition. This was what David believed was his follow-up interview, the one they told him about the day Brad was murdered. The detective immediately asked to swab David's cheek for DNA and to examine his phone so they could eliminate him as a suspect. A very agreeable David told him, "Sure, whatever you need." David went on to tell the detective he and his stepson had visited Brad the day before Brad went to the wedding. Brad had also called him the day of the wedding and after the wedding, and they talked on the phone for a while. David was asked what he did the day of Brad's murder, and David went through his day step by step until he and his wife and stepdaughter arrived at Brad's and found him. What David failed to mention was that he'd been at Brad's prior to finding Brad dead. A neighbor of Brad's had surveillance footage of David's vehicle pulling into Brad's driveway, and then it left 16 minutes after Brad arrived home. After David told the investigator his story, but without being at Brad's house earlier detail, another officer pulled the detective away from the room. He shared that David's phone had turned up some steamy sexual texts and pictures between Brad and David. Fueled with this new information, the detective returned to David. He gave David an opportunity to come clean. Sheepishly, David admitted that he and Brad were having a sexual relationship, yes. It was on top of their friendship, but his wife didn't know. The investigator then told David he had proof that he was at Brad's earlier in the afternoon, around the time Brad was murdered. Then David admitted, yes, he was there. But when he saw Brad drive up to his home, he had a man in the passenger seat. David said he never got out of his own car. He just watched Brad and the man who was with him go into the house. He said a few minutes later he heard a gunshot and he got scared and he left quickly. David apologized for not calling the police. He continued on that the killer had contacted him and told David that if he went to the police, the killer would contact his wife and expose his gay affair. The detective stared David down. He told David, "That's not what happened." Brad's passenger side of his car was full with stuff. There was no man in there. Finally, David just sighed, and he said, yeah, it was just he and Brad. David said Brad was always pressuring him to leave his wife so they could be in a real relationship without hiding it. That day, he and Brad had gotten into an argument again about it. David said they were in a verbal altercation in the basement. Brad started to get really heated, and he told David he was so sick of David fucking with his emotions. David said he told Brad he had no intention of leaving his wife and kids, and he wanted to end the affair with Brad. Brad was pissed and he struck David, and then Brad reached for his pistol that was on top of the covered hot tub. David, who was at least a foot taller than Brad, grabbed the gun and pushed Brad. Brad ran at David, and that's when David fired the gun in self-defense. There's just a little problem with that story. Brad was shot twice in the back of his head. If this had been self-defense, Brad wouldn't have been turned away from David. Bam! Wrong answer, David. Try again. Actually, David's tries with the detective were over. The detective read David his rights and arrested him. David was sentenced on Valentine's Day of 2018. How apropos! His 8-day jury trial ended with a big red velvet heart that said, "Guilty." David was found guilty of aggravated murder. He was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. The state, however, argued against the possibility of parole. If David could execute someone he claimed was his best friend, someone he said he loved, He could most definitely kill someone he didn't know or care about. The sentence, including parole, was overturned, and David was resentenced to life without parole, plus an added 3 more years on for good measure. The state was also looking into suing David and filing a lien on any assets he might own. That way the taxpayers wouldn't have to pay for this trial. I'd say this state prosecutor is definitely getting some unicorn justice for Brad. Rest in power, Brad. This episode's Quickie Crime could be a standalone episode if only there were more information for it. I might revisit this case in the future when there is some closure. The case is out of Moab, Utah. The weekend of August 13th, a newlywed couple were camping near the LaSalle Mountains in Arches National Park. This is 20 miles south of Moab. Just who were these lovebirds? 24-year-old Kylen Schulte and 38-year-old Crystal Turner, who was also known as Crystal Beck. The women were nature lovers, spiritual, kind and giving. In the great outdoors, their love blossomed. They were married just about 5 months ago, and they'd been living a nomadic lifestyle since their wedding. With Moab, Utah being their home, they would travel around to different campsites in the area, enjoying their time with each other in nature. Both women held jobs. Kylen worked at a community co-op type store called Moonflower, and Crystal, she worked at a local McDonald's in Moab. The women were last seen at a tavern in Moab called Woody's. This was on Friday, August 13th. I've read conflicting articles on the date that they were at the tavern. Some say the 13th, some say the 14th. The owner of Woody's diligently went onto the Woody's Facebook page and stated, the actual date the women were in the tavern was Friday, August 13th. And this truly is a big deal because police keep insisting that the women were in the tavern on Saturday, the 14th. But Woody's has video surveillance, and they can even prove the time and date stamp on the video of the women. Kylen and Crystal were there with another couple, also women. This was between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. While they were at the tavern, the couple called friends. They told them about a weirdo that was camping near them, who was intimidating them. They said the guy freaked them out and they were planning on moving their camping site. I wish the ladies would have given a description of their antagonist to their friends. Who knows, maybe they did and no one has been interviewed regarding it. Kylen had also told friends if something happened to them, they were murdered, which is a very eerie foreshadowing thing to say. And it makes me think that these women were truly scared of the guy in their camp. While at the tavern, no one aside from Woody's staff approached the 4 women, and nobody had followed them out of the tavern. The women seemed relaxed and seemed to be enjoying themselves. August 16th, neither Crystal nor Kylen showed up for their work shifts. And that was unlike them. On August 18th, Kylen's dad went onto Facebook in the morning. He posted a photo of the 2 women at their wedding. He titled his post, Missing Persons. He said the couple had spoken to a good friend of theirs, and he told the friend there was a weirdo camping next to him. They were freaked out by him, and they were thinking about moving their campsite. They had now been missing for 4 days and nights. In all caps, Kylen's dad pleads, "Please, please find my girls. If some creep has them on a mountain, please look for Silver Kia." Later that day on the 18th, a friend of Crystal's went out looking for her and Kylen at the campgrounds they were camping at. What prompted her to go besides not hearing from them, and besides Crystal and Kylen not showing up for their work shift for 2 days in a row, and Kylen's dad's desperate plea on Facebook, was that the friend had noticed Kylen and Crystal's van. They had 2 cars, the Kia and a van, The van had been parked in the parking lot of McDonald's for days. At the campsite, the friend found their Kia Sorento. She found their pitch tent and their camping supplies. And she found a makeshift bunny cage for the couple's pet rabbit. The friend continued searching, somewhat close to the couple's campsite in a creek near LaSalle Loop Road in the South Mesa area of the Arches. The friend found the bodies of the newlyweds. Both of the women were nude from the waist down. Both women had been shot in their chests, their sides, and their backs. Sadly, it looks like right out of the gate, the police investigation has been botched in this case. From not believing the date the women were at the tavern, to not actively looking for the creepy guy the women were afraid of, to telling the public not to worry, this incident will sort itself out. Really? There's a killer on the loose. You have no one in custody, but the community of Moab shouldn't be worried. Right. Hopefully, law enforcement can turn it around and find out exactly what happened to Crystal and Kylen, and find some unicorn justice for them. Kylen's family has been hit hard with loss. In 2015, Kylen's brother McKeon died to gun violence as well. McKeon was only 15 years old when he and a friend went to another friend's house named Seth. They went at 2:30 in the morning. McKeon and his friend were outside knocking on Seth's bedroom window, but Seth wasn't waking up. Soon the two boys started to throw small pebbles at Seth's window. Seth stirred inside. He grabbed an old relic handgun his dad had given to him, and when he saw a shadow at the window, he fired, shooting McKeon in the head, killing him. I feel awful for this family and the tragedies that they've gone through. Should you have any information about the murder of Crystal and Kylen in the Moab, Utah area, you're encouraged to call Grand County Sheriff's Office at area code 435-259-8155. If you do not get an answer, leave a detailed message and an investigator will call you back. I hated even saying that. You shouldn't have to leave a fucking message if you have information. Someone there should care enough to pick up the damn phone if a witness is calling. Or there should be a Crime Stopper number or a website that you can do your reporting at. But this is the only information I have to give you, I'm afraid. And it really pisses me off that the Grand County Sheriff's Office is saying to leave a message if no one answers. Are Crystal and Kylen's murders not important enough to them? Is it because they were lesbians? Someone there, the sheriff, for example, needs to pull their head out of their ass and treat Crystal and Kylen with some dignity. I'm sorry, but leave a message is unacceptable. I'm going to keep an eye closely on this case, warriors. We need to insist on justice. If something doesn't happen soon, I'm getting ready to start dropping nasty letters to the Grand County Sheriff's Office and the Governor of Utah. I would also like to mention there's a parallel case unfolding right now. It's regarding the disappearance of another young woman. That young woman is Gabby Petito, and her name and face are all over media worldwide. Spoiler alert, she's not a lesbian. 22-year-old Gabby went missing at the end of August, somewhere between Utah and Wyoming, it's believed. Look around Logan, Utah, I say. Those were the last pictures posted of her in Logan. A text to her mother on August 30th said she had no phone service in Yosemite. Wait a sec, Yosemite? Yosemite is in California, not Wyoming, where she was headed to the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone. So that was odd. Gabby's mom isn't so sure the text was from Gabby, and I'm inclined to believe she's right. Gabby was traveling with her boyfriend. His name is Brian Laundrie. He and Gabby fixed up an old Ford transport van and they converted it into a travel van so they could go and do what they love to do, be one with nature. Although Gabby has disappeared, Brian did not disappear. In fact, Brian showed up in Florida at his parents' home around September 1st. Brian showed up to his parents' home driving the van he and Gabby were traveling in. When Gabby's parents finally reached Brian and asked him where Gabby was, he said nothing. He lawyered up and has refused to cooperate with law enforcement. But more information is starting to seep out, including a report for disorderly conduct. It was called in initially by a witness as domestic violence on August 12th, just before Crystal and Kylen were last seen on the 13th. A witness had called and reported what appeared to be a potential domestic violence situation. It occurred near Moonflower Community Co-op, which, if you remember, is where Kylen worked. The witness said he saw Gabby hit Brian in the arm, and then she climbed into the driver's side window of a white van, as she seemed to be locked out of the van. A police car caught up with the van around the entrance to the Arches National Park. The officer driving flipped on the lights and the siren on his squad car, and the van, which was traveling at a speed of 45 in a 15-mile-per-hour zone, swerved, lost control, and hit a curb before coming to rest at the side of the park's entrance. The officers got out of their vehicle and approached the van. Gabby was in the passenger seat sobbing. An officer asked her to step out of the van and tried to speak with her. He got what he could understand of her story why she cried, and she claimed to suffer from a mental condition, possibly anxiety. Brian was questioned about what happened earlier when the witness called the police. He said that he and Gabby both suffer from a mental health condition, assumed to be anxiety, but Gabby's is worse than his. They'd been traveling together for 4 to 5 months, and sometimes their relationship gets strained and they argue. This time they had been arguing about a phone. Brian said he walked away to get a moment of peace, and then he got back into the van and Gabby went off all manic thinking he was leaving her in Moab without a ride. Gabby had stepped in to slap Brian. Brian said he pushed Gabby back to avoid the slap, putting her off balance, and she grazed his face with her fingernails, which left scratch marks on his face. Responding officers thought it seemed like the couple were having a mental crisis. Brian told the officers neither he nor Gabby take medication for their mental health issues. The police officers convinced the two it would be better if they separated for the evening to cool off, and the officers arranged a hotel for Brian through a program called Seek Haven, which finds temporary shelter for abused men. Then the officers dropped Brian off at a hotel in Moab for the night. Now, when I first heard the theory the disappearance of Gabby could be tied to Crystal and Kylen, I thought, meh, that seems like a very long stretch. Until I learned Gabby and Brian were in Moab and at Arches National Park at the same time of the newlyweds' double homicide. And then Gabby goes missing. So many coincidences keep popping up, making them almost seem like not coincidences. My brain gears are churning, and speculations are frothing to the top. So, as most of you know, I call things as I see 'em, even without all the facts. I just want to say this. Brian Laundrie, you sus little fucker, where's Gabby? And did you have something to do with the murder of Crystal and Kylen? I guess we'll have to wait and see how all this plays out. In the meantime, warriors, how about this? Should you have information about either of these two cases, call the FBI tip line that has been set up for Gabby. Call someone who will actually fucking answer the damn phone at 1-800-225-5324. Gabby, I hope you are found soon. Rest in power, Crystal and Kylen. Love you, Rainbow Warriors. And remember, it's not a crime to be gay unless you're a murderer.